I know I'm a bit late on this topic and that Stranger Things fans are gonna come for my neck, but listen, if you like this season, of course that's okay. I'm not saying I'm the god of media criticism and that my opinion is superior. I'm just saying that to me, Stranger Things 4 was like the Duffer Brothers' Sonic and the Secret Rings. Not as inherently awful as its predecessor, but still rife with problems and not as good as the series' Golden Age. Lastly, before we jump in, I want to preface this by saying that I didn't hate this season. It's still better than whatever CW is doing these days, but the fact that I even have to compare the two says a lot. And with all that said, I'm not holding back, guys. This season really got under my skin, and I can't afford therapy, so let's get into it. Stranger Things 4 had some story elements I really liked. I was intrigued by the larger focus on Max and her inspiring arc of refusing to succumb to her depression. The humor was pretty solid too, better than the last season at least. There were some genuinely heartfelt moments that reminded me I was indeed watching Stranger Things. And for how much I'm about to complain about it, there was clearly a lot of effort and heart put into this season. But with all that said, guys, season 4 sucks so bad. First, I know I'm not the first one to say this, but there are way too many characters. Now, seasons 1 and 2 also had a lot of characters, but pretty much everyone there had narrative purpose. Even minor characters served to push forward either character motivations or the plot. For example, Barb and her death directly gave Nancy more agency and put her on the path to being the badass we know and love in present day. Another example is Bob, whose advice ends up getting Will possessed by the shadow monster. See? Purpose. In season 4, there are way too many characters, to the point where the script feels cluttered and chaotic. The California gang really has nothing to do. Because we have to include so many different storylines, Mike, Will, and Jonathan's arcs don't get the screen time they really should, and that's a problem. Also, I really dislike some of the decisions they made this season story-wise. One of them is kind of small, but the fact that Elle is bullied by the other children in the lab feels so forced. Like, we don't need any more reason to feel bad for her. She was literally taken from her mom and tortured. This is just overkill. Also, there's the fact that Elle didn't even really understand the concept of bullying in season 1, but we'll just gloss over that, I guess. We'll take that Emmy, thank you. The writing in this season is bizarre. It's so far removed from the grounded, subtle dialogue in the first 2 seasons. Let's start with the monologues. It feels like every character in this season has a drawn-out, cliché monologue, and I hate it. Specifically, Will's heart speech, Mike's superhero speech, and Steve's 6 Little Nuggets monologue were painful to sit through. But why? In my opinion, monologues need a very specific context to work. You can only have so many of these overly long conversations before the characters feel less like characters and more like mouthpieces to spew the show's themes. Or characters on The Flash. I'm sorry. I'm done with the CW references, I'm sorry. Let's take a look at Breaking Bad for a second. Both our main characters, Walt and Jesse, have tons of long monologues. But the reason these are so captivating and not boring or tired is because they feel natural to the characters. Walt is a scientific prodigy, an extremely intelligent man with quite the ego. He tends to drone on and on about what he knows to show off his intelligence. He likes to hear himself talk and is always convinced he's in the right. So these bloated monologues make sense. On the other hand, Jesse is scatterbrained, and something cool they did is establish his rambling to be a bit of a character quirk. Walt even calls him out on it a couple times. The point is, the writers of Breaking Bad knew their characters would need lots of powerful monologues. So instead of just having any old character spew their feelings in a 4-minute tangent, they integrate the monologues into the characters' personalities. While in Stranger Things, Jonathan now just gives a long, convoluted declaration of brotherhood to Will, despite his character being a lot more concise and quick-witted in the past. Another problem with these monologues is that they happen right in the middle of conflict. They're walking through the Upside Down, and they're just meandering along, grinding the plot to a halt just to have this cringy, out-of-character monologue from Steve, implying he wants 6 kids with Nancy. 6 Little Nuggets. Good work, guys. Sometimes less is more when it comes to dialogue, and this season doesn't understand that at all. That's not even mentioning how cliché these all are.
I know it's sort of on the nose, but that's what holds this whole party together. Heart.
I'm right here. And I love you.
I don't want to hurt you. You are weak.
Hold on. Before you start angrily typing, I do not think that death is the only way to create compelling drama. I'm not saying one of the leads, such as Max, had to die in order for there to be a satisfying conclusion to the season. However, with the series already suffering from too many characters and a lot of the characters being quite similar to one another, I think killing a lead would be quite compelling and even benefit the show in the long run. Maybe destroy a bit of that plot armor you laid on so thick. And speaking of death, yeah, I guess now I have to talk about the metalhead elephant in the room. Eddie's death was so manipulative. At this point, Stranger Things had well established its trend of introducing a lovable side character only to kill them off at the end of the season. However, as I mentioned, deaths like Barb's had narrative purpose. Her death literally kickstarted Nancy's entire character arc for the show. Now, the Duffer Brothers have admitted to having an aversion to killing main characters. So what they do is create side characters for the audience to get attached to and then kill them off to elicit emotion. They don't take risks in killing off a mainstay and shaking up the show's dynamic, and that would be fine if they didn't try and emotionally manipulate the audience into thinking they do. Eddie's death was solely to try and squeeze the tears from the audience's cold, dead eyes. Also, Eddie's arc is so nonsensical that it's actually kind of hilarious. So Eddie watches Chrissy get Vecna'd in his trailer, and like any normal person in the presence of a never-seen-before paranormal force that cracks bones and makes you do this, Eddie dips out of there. Please tell me I'm not alone in thinking this is a normal reaction, because the show heavily disagrees. See, throughout the rest of the season, Eddie is given a vague don't run away motif. The narrative paints him running away as the wrong thing to do. The big finale to his story is him not running away, and oh, look what happens, he's dead now. Almost like he and everyone else in his life would have been better off if he had just left. Why they didn't just go through the portal and close it, we'll never know. They couldn't have even made his death make sense. Eddie just looks like an idiot who went on a suicide mission. And again with the dialogue. Oh my god. It's giving Life of Brian.
You've given me a wonderful life. I love you all. I love you, Dad. I love you too.
Speaking of death, the plot armor on these characters is actually ridiculous. So everyone talks about Steve, Nancy, and Robin getting strangled for half the finale and somehow coming out okay, which is just bad writing. But there's also the fact that Steve got bitten and he's fine. Also, Elle can just revive people now? What? I've seen people try and defend this, but in my opinion, this is the laziest, stupidest Deus Ex Machina the show has ever used. Revival was never a part of Elle's power, nor was it even foreshadowed in this season. Finally, remember season 1, where defeating one Demogorgon took like a Herculean effort? Now they can take on a horde of bats and Vecna using makeshift weapons and trash can lids? Okay, Duffer Brothers, get that at me, I guess. Alright, I promise I'm almost done talking about death. Just one more thing. Hopper. This might be a hot take, but I fully, wholeheartedly believe that Hopper absolutely should have died in the season 3 finale. I wrote Jopper in the script. I mean, I also don't disagree. First of all, the fake-out death is one of the most tired, overdone tropes in all of fiction. It's super emotionally manipulative, like, oh, the story's ending, but we haven't had enough drama. This character's dying, oh no, and no, never mind, he's okay. It's such a cop-out, and as we've covered, the Duffers don't need any more emotional, cheap drama in their stories. They've got us covered in that regard. Think of how emotional it would be for Eleven to grow through her grief for Hopper. This could even bring her closer to Max, as they're both grieving in their own ways. It would have been so interesting to see their dynamic from season 3 expanded upon, but nope. Moreover, if Hopper was dead, we could have cut this whole Russian storyline. Now, I don't want to talk too much about season 3 here, that's for another video, but long story short, I have never been a fan of the Russian plot. It takes up so much time, too, and it's a real pace breaker from everything else happening. If they didn't take up this much screen time, we could have focused more on the California gang and their storylines. Which brings me to... Yes, this is a whole section. What did they do to these two? They just feel like caricatures. How does character development go backwards? In season 1, Mike was one of my favorite characters. He was a little snide and bossy, yeah, but he was also incredibly perceptive and a natural leader. Something I think the writers have forgotten is that Mike wears his heart on his sleeve, as does Will. At his core, he's deeply sensitive and cares greatly for the well-being of others. But seasons 3 and 4 Mike have actually devolved. Now, I really dislike season 3 and consider it to be the worst of the show, but I'll admit that him growing up and focusing too much on Elle while neglecting his other relationships is a believable character arc for a teenage boy. The problem is season 4. So Mike and Will have grown apart after Will moved across the country almost a year ago. Again, this is a believable conflict. The problem is the execution and how they twist Mike's character to fit with this narrative. He doesn't reciprocate Will's attempts to reach out and treats him like a third wheel once arriving in California. Dude, this is your best friend. What are you doing? Also, remember how I said Mike wears his heart on his sleeve? Well, now he can't even tell Elle he loves her. Weird to see one of his most defining character traits just retconned, but yeah, definitely worth it for this half-baked character arc. Mike is so boring and one note in these later seasons. His singular character trait is that he likes Elle. He has no agency or motivations of his own, and when he and Will finally reconcile, it feels forced and unearned. Now, I've seen some people theorize that Mike does reciprocate Will's romantic feelings towards him, but is dealing with internalized homophobia. You know, with being gay in the 80s and all, and that's why he's so cold towards Will. It would also explain why he has trouble explaining his love for Elle. This is a nice theory, but I don't think the Duffers would ever give up their baby Maleven. They're forced, messy, uncompelling, and uninspired Maleven. Okay, I'm sorry, I know people like Maleven and that's okay. Anyway, even if there is something deeper going on with Mike, the signs aren't clear enough that that's the case. Instead, he just comes off as a one-note jerk. Also, did y'all notice that Mike spent all of season 3 acting high and mighty for not wanting to play D&D with Will, but the second Will leaves, he joins Hellfire Club? What is going on? Furthermore, listen to this line from Mike's speech in the finale.
I feel like my life started that day we found you in the woods.
Your life started the day you met Elle in the woods. 24 hours after your best friend was abducted and could have been presumed dead? Imagine being Will and hearing this, like the day you were ripped away from your family by a paranormal entity, which subsequently began months of physical and mental trauma that resulted in your childhood being taken from you and your friends outgrowing you, is the day your best friend's life really started. Oh wait, I don't have to imagine that because Mike says this while Will is right there. I hate this mushroom-topped buffoon and his jutting cheekbones just... And Will... It's no secret to anyone in my real life that Will is my favorite character. I've always been so intrigued by his story. The idea that this little boy could go through so much trauma and change, yet have the resilience to come out the other side remaining a kind, empathetic person. Even in season 3, the idea that he's emotionally stunted due to his time in the Upside Down and wants to try and live out the childhood that got taken from him is an amazing concept. Too bad they dropped the storyline halfway through, thanks season 3. Now, season 4 had the chance to expand on this, or at least give Will a more active role in the story. See, for the first 3 seasons, Will has been a very passive character. He's stuck in the Upside Down and then possessed. He's never really had control over his own life, and I think season 4 really should have explored this, even if just a bit. Maybe Will is the one leading the fight against Vecna, as he's the one who knows the most about the Upside Down in Elle's absence. Maybe he's tired of being used as a pawn of these creatures. Something! Instead, Will in the season somehow manages to be more passive than in season 1, where he was literally missing. They don't give him anything to do, or any dialogue that really gives him personality. It just feels wrong. Like, would season 1 and 2 Will just stand there while Ella was getting bullied? Nah. Y'all are really just gonna waste Noah Schnapp like this? This guy is capable of amazing acting, and y'all are just gonna give him a presence equivalent to the standing man emoji? And that's not to mention how much they squandered the potential sibling relationship between Will and Elle. These two say like 2 words to each other all season. Never mind seeing their dynamic was what a lot of people were actually most excited for. Never mind they're not only siblings now, but the only 2 directly connected to the Upside Down. Nah, third wheel shenanigans as the writers try and shoehorn in more Malevolent drama is just as good. And yeah, now I'm gonna have to open Pandora's box and talk about Now, I personally much prefer Byler to Malevolent. I'd be okay with them staying friends too, but when watching seasons 1 and 2, you can't deny the bond these two share is unique to any of the other character dynamics. Or at least, the bond they used to share. Yeah, as happy as I was about Will's feelings towards Mike finally being confirmed, it's just too late. Mike and Will have been growing apart since season 3 and don't share any of the chemistry they used to. Will only now realizing his crush on Mike feels odd, as Mike has been nothing but cold and distant to him for 2 seasons now. But that aside, I don't see any way this subplot could pay off without its own set of problems. If Mike doesn't end up reciprocating Will's feelings, which is what I think they're probably going with, then what's the payoff to all Will's trauma here? I'm sorry, I'm all for queer representation, but Will deserves so much more than to be sidelined to the gay guy who likes his straight best friend. If they were going to confirm Will's sexuality, which again is great, then why didn't they give him a new love interest? They sure don't have problems with adding new characters. If Mike doesn't like Will back, this whole subplot just feels like a dead end. But on the other hand, if Mike does like Will, then it just wouldn't feel believable. These two were golden during season 2, and a romantic relationship between them would have been believable. But as I said, it just feels too late, and they definitely don't have enough time to develop them as a couple. With everything else that's going to be going down in season 5, I just don't see a way this could all work. I think the Duffers wrote themselves into a corner, and that's really sad. Okay, pause. This is unrelated to critiquing Stranger Things, but I have to say, if you're one of those people losing your minds over Will being gay and the show being quote-unquote woke, then grow up. Gay people existed in the 80s too, and sometimes a gay character is just a gay character. There isn't always an agenda. Anyways, I don't want to talk about this or about Byler anymore. Let's move on to the other romantic relationships of the season. Will they be better? No, they're not. For some reason, the writers decided to recycle a plotline from season 1 and bring back the good old Steve, Nancy, and Jonathan love triangle. Yippee! This conflict actually makes no sense. It feels like a regression of all their individual character arcs, and besides that, it's just not interesting. The way the other characters, specifically Robin, act as cheerleaders for Steve and Nancy is ridiculous. Also, side note, did anyone else feel like Robin was a completely different character this season? Like, in season 3 she was calm, cool, and confident. She kept the others in line. But now she's overly anxious and talkative, and even portrayed as a bit of an airhead.
Holy shit, there's a little ballerina in here.
Academic scholar. She's giving you an academic scholar vibe.
I don't know why the Duffers dumb down their characters at any given turn, but back to the matter at hand. I don't buy that Steve never got over Nancy. And why? Because he literally would have dated Robin if Robin hadn't been a lesbian. Do we just get collective amnesia and forget that? All I have to say about this is that it's tired, recycled, and uninspired. These are interesting characters, and this is what you do with them? Despite the problems I've mentioned, I was pretty invested in Volume 1. It felt fresh and dramatic, and I was excited to see where they'd take the storyline. Then Volume 2 happened. The final episode was 2.5 hours, and it sure felt like it. Despite being longer than some movies, very few characters received proper resolution to their arcs, and the story felt very bloated. There are way too many flashback sequences in this thing. A few I understand, but after the 4th time, they lose their weight. Also, Vecna's monologue was so cartoonishly evil, it was painful. Not every villain needs to twirl their mustache and announce their evil plan. Sometimes with dialogue, less is more, as I've said. This thing is so long, but barely anything gets resolved. It's bloated with overly long, cheesy monologues and flashback sequences. I was not a fan. I think Stranger Things has lost its sense of self. It's no longer confident in what worked so well in the past, and instead resorts to soap opera-like tropes to retain the audience's attention. From petty character drama to painful dialogue, I no longer hold the same interest in the show as I once did. I feel betrayed. Stranger Things was once one of my favorite shows, a piece of media so unlike anything else in its quality and its charm. But now it's so far removed from the grounded subtlety of the first 2 seasons. I'm not saying a show can't evolve or try new things, but Stranger Things has evolved backwards. The characters feel more one-note than ever, the dialogue is more cheesy and ridiculous, and the story is just too big that it's impossible to suspend my disbelief. I don't have much faith in Season 5, but I'll be more than happy to be proven wrong. After all, the same team gave us so many iconic, heartwarming moments and characters. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Thank you so much for watching. I definitely made some enemies with this, but I needed to get it off my chest. Again, if you like this season, that's absolutely fine. This is just my silly opinion. Let me know your thoughts. If you agree, if you disagree, if there's going to be a shipping war in the comments, let me know. Today's shout out is going to my best friend in the whole world. I met her because she commented on my Tasmo video, and now we're besties. She's amazing. Just give her all the love in the world. Shower her with compliments. If any of y'all would like a shout out, just let me know in the comments and I'll integrate you in my next video. Thank you to everyone who is a part of the CosmoBunny family. And if you're new here, you're a part of the family now. No backing out. Nah, but for real, I love y'all. Just thank you so much for everything you do and have an amazing day.